Hello, students and alumni alike, and welcome back to the show FIXATIONS, where we talk about our students and the latest obsession. And today we have Daysiah Wood. She is a senior at Fayetteville State University with a major in English and concentration, and she is a proud member of the Rho Alpha Sigmas. Let's see her fixation today. How are we, Daysiah Wood?
Doing amazing.
You're doing amazing?
Yeah.
I see you got a lot of props on our show today.
Have to prepare.
Prepare for what? For your fixation?
No, in fixation, you know, just going out here trying to fight evil.
What is your fixation?
Mine is Legend of Zelda.
The Legend of Zelda. Probably, probably one of my favorite video game series right now. Like, honestly, it's a very beautiful series. But when did your fixation start?
It started back with the Nintendo 64, so it was with the earliest versions of Legend of Zelda.
Dang.
Yeah, it was back when I had to share a console with my older brother, so it was more or less like we were fighting over one controller. But for the most part, I really did enjoy just the whole concept of fighting and saving a princess. But when the series started really getting into the storyline and all the lore, that's when things started getting a little more complicated. I actually really started getting into admiring Link as a hero.
And like, it's such a generic plotline, saving the princess, but it's so satisfying every single time. And like, they always change up the formula in a different way the story goes.
Right.
I think mine started when I was it was pretty late for me because I've always admired the Zelda series, but I never got to a Zelda game until the pandemic, 2020. Worst year ever. Hated every second of it.
Fair.
And it was during fall of November, because normally I would play a new game around Thanksgiving, but around that time, there were no new games to play.
Okay.
So I was like, shoot, what am I gonna do? So we had Breath of the Wild, and my sister played, but we had Breath of the Wild just sitting like in our inventory, in our collection, for like 2 years ever since we got the Switch. And I got one with just like, okay, well, there's no better time to start than now. And when I tell you, I turned it on, and then I kept playing, and kept playing, and kept playing.
And I'm pretty sure you kept playing.
Yeah, I kept playing. I didn't put the game down at all. It was generally one of the best first experiences where I would have franchise of all time. And then I was like, ooh, I gotta see what the other Zelda games are like. So then I played Ocarina of Time. Okay. And I loved that to death.
Right.
And then I looked high and low for Wind Waker. And then I played that to death. And then I started playing the 2D Zeldas. And like,
it was just a rabbit hole after that.
After that, it was over. I was like, it was over. I was in the Zelda rabbit hole. And I think I was like 16. That was several years ago. And I'm still obsessed with all the Zelda and the lore.
Right.
And it's for that reason that my first experience, Breath of the Wild, and I guess for that matter, Tears of the Kingdom, are like my favorite Zelda games. But we'll get into my problems with them much later. But what is your favorite Zelda game?
My favorite Zelda game would more than likely be Twilight Princess.
Oh.
Yeah. Because you would think that it's Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild is actually why I ended up buying a Switch. But Tears of the Kingdom too. But Twilight Princess was one of those series where I really feel like Link's story came through in a way that you recognize that he is the hero and the hero is him. He didn't choose to be the hero, it just ended up happening. And it's one of those things where I feel like if there were opportunities for him to actually get away from what he was born to be, he more likely would have been. But in every story, Link just decides to become the hero.
Do you have a favorite character?
My favorite character out of it would actually be, surprisingly enough, Ganon.
Okay.
I actually enjoy Ganon. Partially because just like Link never chose to be the hero, Ganon never really chose to be the villain. Now in some iterations he does do things that, you know, are villainous. At the same time, he's always lured in by Din. At the end, like, he's literally cursed. They're all cursed to pretty much play out these roles over and over again. Even if he's trying to be someone that's good, because he's the King Gerudo. Like, he's literally one of the last males that's born, and he's having to shoulder all this weight, but at the same time, he's cursed with power. He's cursed with the lust for it. and he's not made to be the hero at the end of the day.
It's even fun. It's even more interesting because Ganon has always been like the up to Tears of the Kingdom, but once again we'll get to that. Has always been like the same Ganon through and through, like the same Ganon that lost or won in Ocarina of Time, because he either becomes the pig monster or he gets trapped in the Twilight Zone.
Right.
And in Wind Waker, it's when like he's trying to, let me use a lot of air quotes, correct the error of his mistakes.
Right.
My favorite character is probably, it would be specifically Hero of Time Link from Ocarina of Time. I think he has the most, like, how do I say, the most coming of a hero story.
Yeah.
Because not only did he saw this as a child, he's not really bullied in a sense, but he's always been known as like the boy without a fairy.
Yeah.
Like he just felt like he never belonged. And then out of nowhere, he loses all his childhood. And then when he does save the world, nobody remembers him.
Yeah, I think that's always the hardest part whenever I play Ocarina of Time. Because I actually have, I didn't bring it with me today, but I actually have a replica of the Ocarina that they have in the game. And one of the songs that I was learning how to play is Zelda's Lullaby, and also the Song of Healing. So I played Ocarina of Time for the first time.
You know, I'm actually glad that you brought up Zelda's Lullaby and the music of Zelda, because that leads to my next question, because something that's just as popular as the characters in the story with Zelda is the music.
Right.
Do you have like, because music is a big thing in Zelda, except for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but we'll get into that. What is your favorite Zelda track or favorite Zelda song or melody?
See, that one's hard because there's quite a few that I enjoy. I would say my favorite would be Mipha's. Mipha's song for the most part, partially because I like Mipha as a character, but also just because I like it in a way that it mirrors a lot with Zelda. I see Zelda and Mipha as foils of one another. Mipha was very loved by her people. She had her powers. She did the best that she could for everything, for the Zora. She was that inspirational figure that Zelda wanted to be and that she was. She just couldn't see it because she wasn't given the love and respect that she was due. So half the time when I was listening to Mipha's, it was more or less like I'm seeing someone who was very uplifting, but at the same time, she had a terrible fate. And it kind of reminded me of Zelda's Lullaby because I'm just thinking, especially with Breath of the Wild Zelda, she lost her mother at a young age. She had nobody to teach her how to be the vessel of the goddess. And it was just one of those things where the whole weight of the world was being put on her shoulders, but she's just a 17-year-old girl. Like, what was she supposed to do? And not even her father was giving her any sympathy. So when you look at Mipha, and they're going around and visiting all the divine beasts, and she's just someone who Zelda wants to be, and I just saw that defeat. So it's just one of those things where whenever I hear the song, I just remember like these two princes who are really trying their best at the end of the world, and there's just, you know, it's all on their shoulders, but who's really gonna help them?
I'm sorry I made you worry. I wish I could see you again. Even just once more.
My favorite theme, personally, I think it would be, it's also really hard for me, I switch all the time. Although it's probably something else, the song that always pops up in my head when I think of Zelda music is Saria's song.
That's a good one.
I love it.
That's a good one. That's
I love
a
it.
good one.
It's just filled with so much like childlike wonder.
Yeah.
Like when you hear the song, everything about it just, you feel like a child. Now, I have two questions left. This is related to the Zelda movie that got announced a couple months ago.
Okay.
It's live action, it's not animated. So my question is why?
Listen, I'm the biggest proponent for animation. I love animation. I love it to death. I don't have any answers for you as to why live action. I don't know why a lot of people, like, look at the Super Mario movie. They went with animation and it did great.
And it was awesome.
And like Sonic, like, yeah, they do have like live action parts, but it's mostly, you know, they're animated.
And they're even going at a point where they're not barely using the human characters.
Yeah, we saw the original Sonic design. No, so it's just one of those things where it's just with Legend of Zelda. Please.
Like, have you seen people online before, or like fan animations of people making a Zelda content in like the Studio Ghibli style?
Yeah, and if we had a Studio Ghibli style Zelda movie, I would lose my mind, because a lot of the time in Breath of the Wild, I was thinking to myself, because a lot of the silence and things like that, and just the way that the world was interacting, and the big emphasis on food, I was just like, yeah, no, Ghibli, this feels like Ghibli inspired, because like
that's Ghibli's mark. Oh, and there is no one I could trust more with a mute character than Studio Ghibli, because in live action, how are you gonna make somebody play Link and not talk? I don't want him to talk, but
it has to be a lot of gestures and things like that, because
I don't think that's gonna work in live action.
I don't know if there's anybody who's capable of just pulling off the body language that comes with being Link. Because granted, though, they do say that in a lot of the games he does talk, but we just don't hear him.
Hey, excuse me, princess.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
We have one more question for our time today.
Right.
So, this is what I've been holding back on for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
I love those games.
Okay.
I feel like for its time, and probably forevermore, those games are gonna remain on like a pedestal in history. Those games, as games, are so good.
Okay.
But as Zelda games, people have started to get a little tired of the formula.
In what way?
Well, Zelda always had this thing where its formula is you go to these certain amount of dungeons,
okay,
you get these upgrades, you do these side quests.
That's true.
And while they evolved it to the point for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, a lot of the traditions that they used to do are no longer in those games. Like the traditional formula of saving the princess, or like Ganondorf not having a motive in this one, or the Triforce.
Okay.
Triforce is nowhere to be found in those games.
Okay.
So people have been thinking about wanting to go back to the linear form of Zelda, and the other half is divided on the fact that they need to stick with the open world aspect.
Okay.
So I would like to ask you, what do you think Zelda should be?
Both. Partially because I really feel like at the end of the day, Zelda is one of those games where you are discovering the world and at the same time just discovering who you are as a hero. Especially through Link's eyes, but just the things that you decide to do. Because there's so many times where in Zelda games, I feel like the interaction with all the characters does build up the world a lot more. As I said before, in Breath of the Wild, the world was very quiet. You can tell that something has happened and that everything has changed, but you begin to have a lot more of the life and vigor build back into it because you're interacting with all the side characters. You're finding out stories. You're getting chased by a lady for stepping on flowers. It's just all those things that make the world so much bigger. And it's not all about saving the princess at the end of the day. Zelda held her own during Breath of the Wild, while Link was pretty much like, you could go for hours and just be doing whatever. So it's one of those things where I feel like you can have both of those. You can have him saving the princess. Shoot, you can have the princess saving him, as we had in Echoes of Wisdom. But it's one of those things where I do feel like the open world aspects need to be kept, because Zelda is opening up more to the wider story than what is just the linear. We're beginning to get more of like the backstory. We're beginning to see Zelda and Link not only together but apart as who they are as the princess and the knight. So it's one of those things where I don't feel like we need to go backwards. I feel like we need to take the past with us into the future and create something new, because we're branching off into something else. It's starting a new timeline, because all the Zelda games before were culminated in Skyward Sword, and Skyward Sword brought on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Then it's more or less like, where do we go from there? You know, it's one of those things. Because the series itself is evolving. Now we can bring the traditional aspects back, and in some ways I feel like they are still here, because like you were saying that we only had like 4 major dungeons. Like, how many shrines were there? There were like what, 200 shrines or something like that. So it's just more or less like those aspects are still there. It's just how people view it. Just same way that it's how people view Link and Zelda as characters, like just in different ways. So we're just constantly evolving, and they also have to remember we're still growing. All of us still growing up. I was about what 5, 6 when I first played my Zelda game, and it's been about 20-something years since then. So it's one of those things where the series is going to continue to evolve. We're still going to evolve as people, and at the same time, we still can enjoy this thing that brought us all together in the first place.
I think that's the best way that we can end this discussion. And I thank you for having us on the show and for showing us your love for Zelda.
Hey, all day, every time.
All day. All right, thank you guys so much, and tune in for the next episode of Fixations. We bid you adieu. And that ends our week's Fixation. Please support the official release of any source material you've seen used in this episode, and all information and music used will be located on your screen for you right now. And hey, if you want to be in the show, I will leave my information down on the screen for you as well, or you can just come talk to me anytime you wish on Faithful State University. Thank you for watching, and tune in for next week's Fixation.